Level 1. The candidate. You're 18. You didn't stumble into this. You chose it. You drove 3 hours to the recruiting station in Columbus, Georgia, signed the contract, and shook the recruiter's hand. You told your mother that night. She didn't cry. She just held your face in her hands for a long time and said nothing. You signed an option 40 contract. It's a promise, not a guarantee, that you'll get a shot at becoming a ranger. It gets you to the starting line, nothing more. 3 weeks later, you're at Fort Benning. It's 4:30 in the morning. Someone is screaming before you even open your eyes. Infantry 1 Station Unit Training, OSUT, is 22 weeks. Basic combat training and advanced individual training fused into a single, unbroken pipeline. The same drill sergeants who break you in week 1 will watch you graduate in week 22. There is nowhere to reset. There is no fresh start. The first weeks are controlled misery. You run in boots that haven't broken in yet. Your heels bleed through your socks. You don't complain because the man next to you hasn't said a single word about his either, and he's running just as hard. Pain is not special here. Pain is the entry fee. You qualify on the M4 rifle. You throw your first live grenade. You rappel down a wooden tower while a drill sergeant counts your mistakes out loud. You pass, but barely. As the weeks deepen, the training shifts. Fireteam movements, hasty ambushes, room-clearing fundamentals, urban marksmanship, day and night land navigation. You stop feeling like a recruit and start feeling like an infantryman. And there's a difference, and you feel it in the way you move. At night in the barracks, someone mentions the 75th Ranger Regiment. Quietly, like a name you're not supposed to say too loud. Everyone pretends not to be listening. Everyone is listening. You don't sleep much that night. Level 2, Airborne School. You're 18. Still 18. The pipeline doesn't slow down. Fort Benning. 3 weeks. The basic airborne course. Every ranger must be airborne qualified before joining a battalion. Airborne School comes right after OSUT, before RASP. This is the order. This is the door you walk through. Week 1 is ground week. You learn to fall. Parachute landing falls on packed Georgia dirt until your knees feel like gravel. The instructors are called black hats. They don't raise their voices because they don't have to. When you land wrong, they tell you once. The second time, they write something down. Week 2 is Tower Week. You're hoisted 250 feet into the air on a steel structure and released. The parachute deploys. You steer toward the drop zone. The ground comes up faster than you expect. Every single time. You think you're ready for it. You're not. You hit the dirt, roll, and come up grinning because you didn't break anything. And right now, that feels like enough. Week 3 is Jump Week. 5 static line jumps from a C-130. 2 of them before sunrise. Your third jump, a man 2 slots ahead of you, freezes at the door. 1 second. 2. The jump master moves. The moment breaks. He goes, then you go. Wind hits your face like a wall. The T-10 parachute cracks open, and for 4 seconds, there is absolute silence. Just wind and sky, and Georgia 1,000 feet below. You land in a field at the edge of Fort Benning. Morning sun over the tree line. You gather your chute and jog to the assembly point, thinking, I could do this forever. You earn your jump wings. Silver. 3 weeks of work. They pin them above your left breast pocket, and you feel for the first time like you're becoming someone specific. The next order comes. Ranger Assessment and Selection Program. Report date, 3 weeks. You fold the paper and put it in your locker. You already know what it says. Level 3, Ranger Assessment and Selection Program. You're 18, about to turn 19. They tell you the dropout rate before you start. More than half. They say it like a weather report. You nod and pretend it doesn't land. It lands. RASP is 8 weeks. Its purpose is to find candidates who will quit and remove them before they reach a battalion. The regiment cannot afford to find out who breaks when it matters. So they find out here on purpose. Day 1, 4 a.m. You are not eased in. The first phase centers on RAP week. Ranger assessment phase. You run. You don't know how far. If you knew, you'd start calculating, and there is no negotiating here. You run until someone drops. You keep running. There's a water obstacle in 48-degree water. Full kit, boots, uniform, body armor. You come out and immediately move to the next evolution. The cadre watch with flat expressions and write things on clipboards. Everything is being evaluated. Not just your body, your face, how you respond to misery. On day 3, a soldier from outside Savannah named Torres has been running beside you since morning. At midnight, during a road march through the Georgia woods, he says without looking at you, "Don't think about tomorrow, just this step." You repeat it to yourself for the next 4 hours. On day 5, Torres doesn't return from a medical evaluation. Stress fracture. His rack is empty by afternoon. You stare at it, then look away. This place doesn't pause for individuals. Phase 2 shifts from breaking you down to building you up, in the image of a ranger. Land navigation by map and compass. Demolitions. Advanced marksmanship. Ranger first responder medical training. Close quarters battle. Fast rope. Combatives. You learn the Ranger Creed until it stops sounding like words and starts sounding like breath. Recognizing that I volunteered as a ranger, fully knowing the hazards of my chosen profession, I will always endeavor to uphold the prestige, honor, and high esprit de corps of the Rangers. Every line means something different when you've been awake 36 hours. On graduation day, they place the tan beret on your head at the Ranger Memorial. You look in the mirror. You stand differently. Not taller, just more certain. You are assigned to 1st Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, Hunter Army Airfield, Savannah, Georgia. Private First Class, 19 years old, a Ranger. Before we go further, if you've made it this far, comment what you want next, hit that like button right now, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We upload every single day. Level 4, Private First Class. You're 19. In the Ranger Regiment, rank tells you where you stand. But in a Ranger platoon, more a title tells you more. Yours, right now, is New Guy. You are not called by your name for the first 2 weeks. Cherry. Boot. One sergeant calls you Ghost because, he says, you don't exist yet. You laugh when he's not looking. You don't laugh when he is. The regiment runs at a pace conventional units don't match. Rangers during the day. Mission rehearsals at night. PT before dawn. The standard is never good enough. It's Ranger standard. A moving target always just ahead of wherever you are. The standard doesn't come to you. You go to the standard. Your squad leader is Staff Sergeant Kowalski. 27, which feels ancient to you. Short sentences, never repeats himself. On day 3, you fumble a room clearing drill and hold up the stack for 2 full seconds. Kowalski says nothing. That night, after everyone goes to chow, Artie runs the drill with you alone for 45 minutes. He doesn't explain. He just runs it until you stop fumbling. 6 months in, you deploy. Afghanistan, Kandahar Province, 2013. You fly in on a blacked-out CH-47 Chinook at 2 a.m., night vision device on your helmet, rifle on your chest, 19 years of life behind you, and nothing but dark mountains ahead. You are more awake than you have ever been. Your first objective is a compound outside Zangabad, a known waypoint used by a mid-level insurgent facilitator. The assault is clean, fast. Your team moves through the breach and clears 3 rooms in under 90 seconds. No shots fired. 1 detainee. Back on the helicopter before the sun comes up. On the flight back, nobody talks. Kowalski stares out the open cargo door at dark ridgelines below. What you realize sitting there, the mission wasn't exciting, it was precise. There's a difference. Excitement is for people who don't know what they're doing. Precision is for Rangers. You file your after-action notes. You clean your weapon. You sleep 4 hours. Then you do it again. Level 5. Specialist. You're 21. 2 deployments. Afghanistan both times. Over 50 missions. Doors breached in Helmand at midnight. Compounds cleared in Logar before sunrise. The fear hasn't gone away. You've learned where to put it. It drives you now instead of stopping you. Your marksmanship scores are in the top 10% of the battalion. Your commander presents you a commendation for exceptional performance under fire in Kunar province. Communications broke down, a secondary element came under contact. And you held suppression long enough for them to consolidate and extract. He shook your hand in front of the formation. You didn't feel proud. You felt like you'd done the thing you trained to do. Now you're thinking about the tab. The Ranger tab is earned at Ranger School, the Army's premier small unit leadership course. 61 days, 3 phases. Rangers in the regiment are expected to attend. Not required by policy. Expected. In this battalion, everyone understands the difference. Ranger School begins at Camp Darby, Fort Benning, in January. You chose January deliberately. You heard the cold makes it harder. Benning phase. 21 days of attrition and tactical fundamentals. Mountain phase follows at Camp Frank D. Merrill in Dahlonega, Georgia. Blue Ridge Mountains in January, below freezing at night. 1 MRE a day. A patrol missions while your body runs on nothing. You fail a patrol in mountain phase. 1 peer evaluation below threshold. You're recycled. 2 weeks in a holding area, watching the next class arrive, then running the same mountains again. You earn a go the second time. Florida phase is last. Camp Rudder, near Eglin Air Force Base. Swamps, small boats, patrol bases in terrain that smells like sulfur. 15 days. You finish. You graduate 61 days after you started. 14 pounds lighter. When they sew the black and gold tab onto your left shoulder, your girlfriend takes a photo. You don't look at the camera. You're looking at the tab. You return to 1st Battalion with something different in you. Not confidence, something quieter. Certainty. Level 6. Sergeant. You're 23. You are a team leader. 4 men, your team. For the first time, failure is not only yours. When your Rangers underperform, you ask what you missed in training. When one excels, you feel it more than when you excelled yourself. Your youngest is Private First Class Decker, 19, from outside Boise, Idaho. Sharp, fast, good questions. But he rushes his muzzle discipline in close quarters drills, barrel sweeping past a teammate's leg on pivots. You pull him aside after the 3rd time. You don't yell. You cite a documented incident from Helmand Province, 2011. A ranger shot in the calf by a teammate during a night clearing operation. Non-fatal. Career-altering. You say it once, plainly, the way Kowalski always spoke to you. Decker's muzzle discipline is clean from that day forward. You deploy to Iraq. 2016. Erbil, working with Kurdish Peshmerga against ISIS remnants in Nineveh province. Different from Afghanistan, more urban. Compounds close together. Threats layered differently. Booby-trapped entries. Vehicle-borne IEDs, pre-staged in alleyways. Fighting positions, reinforced inside residential walls. Every objective requires you to think about the building before you enter it. The environment is trying to kill you before you even make contact. On a night mission east of Mosul, your team enters a structure flagged as an ISIS transit point. First room clear. Second clear. Third room. A man seated at a low table, both hands raised immediately. No weapon visible. Decker is on him in 2 seconds. Controlled, smooth, exactly the way you trained it. Flex cuffed. No shots fired. Clean. On the helicopter back, Decker catches your eye across the cargo bay. You give him a single nod. He looks back out the window. All that nod costs nothing. It means everything. Level 7. Staff Sergeant. You're 26, 11 men, 3 teams, your squad. The battalion has rotated through 6 deployments since you arrived at the regiment. You've been on 4 of them. The faces change with every rotation. New Rangers arrive, straight from RASP. Others tabbed. some with combat experience already. Some remind you of yourself at 19, wide-eyed and careful, still figuring out where their fear lives. Some of them are already better than you were at their age. That doesn't bother you. It's supposed to work that way. You attend the Special Operations Combat Medic course at Fort Bragg, SOCM, 36 weeks. Tension pneumothorax management, surgical airways, hemorrhagic shock in the dark. Week 29, practical. 4 minutes on a simulated casualty. Our instructor counting aloud behind you. IV on the first attempt. Wound packed in 46 seconds. He moves to the next station. You've learned to read that silence. Pass. Syria, 2019. Advise and assist with Syrian Democratic Forces outside Deir ez-Zor. Your squad is embedded with an SDF company in a region still pocked with ISIS remnants following the collapse of the caliphate. The mission is officially train and advise, but the line between advising and leading blurs at 3 a.m. when a convoy takes fire and the SDF element freezes at the point of contact. Your squad establishes a base of fire in 11 seconds. Contact breaks in 3 minutes. 2 SDF fighters wounded. You treat both in the dark with a headlamp taped to your helmet. Through and through wound to the forearm. Clean entry, clean exit, pack and wrap. Fragmentation in the left thigh, deep and irregular. You work the wound, talk to him while you work, and keep your hand steady even though they don't feel steady. Both men survive. On the flight back, Master Sergeant Villarreal sits next to you. You ran that right, he says quietly. You nod. There are things in this job that feel good, and things that feel necessary, and sometimes they're the same, and sometimes they aren't. You're still learning to tell the difference. Level 8, Sergeant First Class. You're 31, Platoon Sergeant, 42 Rangers. You are responsible, not just accountable, for the training readiness, physical condition, moral bearing, and combat effectiveness of 42 people. You know their names, their hometowns, their injuries, their blind spots, and which ones will hold under pressure when it costs something. You no longer run at the front of the stack. Your role is to build the machine that runs them. The difference between a platoon sergeant who understands this and one who doesn't is the difference between a platoon that performs and one that just trains. You redesign the pre-deployment training cycle. Move the medical sustainment block earlier so skills are sharper downrange. Add a low-light shooting block in week 3. Insert a regional culture orientation, not fluency, just enough context that your rangers know what they're walking into. The changes aren't dramatic, they're precise. Precision is the whole point. Somalia, 2021. Al-Shabaab counter-terrorism operations in the lower Shabelle region. Flat scrubland, sparse villages, 105-degree days. Before the first mission, you brief the platoon on heat casualty prevention. Not because they don't know it, because repetition at the right moment isn't redundancy. It's emphasis. 7 months, 41 missions, no friendly killed in action, 3 wounded. All 3 return to duty within the deployment window. At the end of rotation debrief, your company commander asks what you attribute the numbers to. You say, training, standards, and luck in that order. You mean all 3 equally. He nods. You know what that nod means. You've been giving it for years. Level 9, Master Sergeant/Sergeant Major. You're 38. Battalion Operations Sergeant Major. The regiment has 3 battalions. 1st at Hunter Army Airfield, 2nd at Joint Base Lewis McChord, 3rd at Fort Benning. And you are at the top of the enlisted structure in yours. You don't deploy with a platoon. You shape how the battalion deploys. You build a junior NCO leader development program. 8 weeks, running garrison between deployment cycles. Tactical decision making. Ethical reasoning under stress. What you call the invisible standard. The idea that a leader's behavior when no one is watching sets the actual ceiling for the unit. Not the training manual. Not the inspection. The invisible standard. You repeat it until it stops sounding like a phrase and starts sounding like a principle. You are not trying to build rangers who perform well on evaluations. You are trying to build rangers who perform the same way whether anyone is watching or not. One afternoon, Sergeant Espinoza closes your office door. 3 years in the regiment. Consistent performer, strong evaluations, just back from his 3rd deployment. And he wants to know, officer candidate school or stay enlisted? You talk for 45 minutes. You don't give him the answer. You ask what kind of impact he wants to have, what he'll still be proud of in 20 years, what he thinks he'll regret more. By the end of the conversation, he knows. You knew it in the first 10 minutes. You let him find it himself, because that's the point. He won't doubt it if it came from him. 3 years later, 2nd Lieutenant Espinoza reports to 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, Joint Base Lewis McCord. You hear about it from the battalion commander. You say nothing. You go back to the readiness report on your desk. Level 10, Command Sergeant Major. You're 42. Command Sergeant Major of the 75th Ranger Regiment. One of you. Senior enlisted advisor to the regimental commander. 3 battalions. And a special troops battalion. A regimental headquarters. 23 years in the regiment. You know what it looked like during the surge. Battalions rotating downrange on 90-day cycles. Barely a month back before they were packing again. You know what it looked like when the tempo slowed and the institution had time to breathe and examine itself. You know the names of the Rangers who didn't come home. You say them sometimes, quietly, to yourself, on the dates that matter. Your role is not tactical, not operational, institutional. You are the living standard. The values, loyalty, duty, honor, integrity, personal courage, are not abstractions to you. You have held each one under pressure, felt some bend. You rebuilt them. You carry them the way you carry a weapon, with full awareness of their weight and what it costs when you set them down. You speak at RASP graduations and look at the faces of 19-year-olds receiving their tan berets. You see what you looked like. You feel the weight of what they don't know yet. You brief the Secretary of the Army on enlisted leader development. You represent the regiment in Joint Special Operations forums alongside the senior enlisted of Delta Force, the 161st SAW, and Naval Special Warfare. You are not impressed by titles. You have known the finest people this country produces. Some of them were privates. One morning in early spring, you drive onto Hunter Army Airfield before sunrise. You park and cut the engine. Somewhere in the dark, a formation is running. Boots on pavement, a cadence called low, and just the shape of it reaching you through the windshield. You listen for a while. You think about the 18-year-old who drove to Columbus, Georgia, whose heels bled through his socks and said nothing, who stared at Torres's empty rack and decided not to slow down, who failed a patrol in the Blue Ridge Mountains in January and ran them again. You were never just climbing. You were becoming. Every cold morning. Every door breached in the dark. Every standard held when it would have been easier to lower it. Every ranger built up and sent forward. Everyone prayed home. None of it was a step toward something else. It was the thing itself. The formation in the dark keeps running. You get out of the car and walk toward the sound.